Welcome to Quick News. Tensions are rising as Washington rolls out the red carpet for Moscow. What looked like a scene of historic diplomacy in Alaska was, under closer inspection, a carefully staged spectacle that raised more questions than it answered. The meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin was hailed by mainstream outlets as a transatlantic romance of diplomacy, yet the reality was far more troubling. The first visit of a Russian leader to U.S. soil since 2015, hosted not in the symbolic halls of democracy, but inside a military base. And let's not forget, Putin currently faces an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court for alleged war crimes, a fact conveniently swept aside in the mainstream coverage, even if the United States itself is not part of the tribunal. The reception was choreographed to impress. Red carpets, stealth bombers on display, and air artillery salutes, staged as if it were a peaceful show of military strength. To the casual eye, this could be read as firmness, but from a progressive lens, it resembled something closer to symbolic adulation for a dictator. Critics argue this was less about diplomacy and more about normalizing authoritarian power, while most hegemonic media kept their coverage cautious, failing to question the troubling implications of such a spectacle. Don't skip. What comes next might change how you see global power. This is Quick News, fast, clear geopolitics. Want deeper analysis? Drop a comment or just type "I'm in." Something special is coming, starting free. During their joint conference, Putin portrayed the meeting as constructive, evoking shared history with the United States, Russian heritage in Alaska, wartime alliances in the Second World War, as though today's brutal war in Eastern Europe and his increasingly autocratic rule were minor inconveniences, not fractures in global democracy. Trump, meanwhile, described the talks as friendly and full of progress, even though no tangible agreements were announced. For the mainstream narrative, this was dialogue. But for critical observers, it was a moment of dangerous normalization, in which Putin emerged with his international stature reinforced without conceding anything of substance. The Guardian framed it as a clear diplomatic loss for Washington, as Trump quietly abandoned demands for an immediate ceasefire in favor of Putin's preferred language of a comprehensive peace. Time magazine pointed to three clear victories for Putin: the U.S. shift away from a ceasefire, the lack of new sanctions, and the ceremonial honor extended to him, effectively re-legitimizing his global image. The Washington Post echoed this, noting that while it was not a total disaster, the meeting left Trump looking like he had softened his stance, oversimplifying Ukraine's reality and parroting some of Putin's dubious talking points without context. Here lies a key question. Why did mainstream outlets embrace this so-called dialogue as progress when no ceasefire was secured, when Ukraine was excluded from the talks, and when Russia emerged with enhanced credibility on the international stage? Give us your opinion in the comment box below. The White House's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, defended the summit as nothing more than a listening session, dismissing critical journalism as elitist obstructionism. And what was truly left on the table? Not much. Trump vaguely suggested that the next move now belongs to President Zelensky, hinting at a possible direct meeting in the future. This shifting of responsibility onto Ukraine, however, fits a familiar pattern: blaming the victim and sidelining the very nation whose sovereignty and survival are under direct attack. Even more concerning, leaked details suggest that Russia floated a compromise resembling NATO-style security guarantees for Ukraine, but only under the condition of a Russian veto. Meanwhile, European voices were conspicuously absent. Analysts from the European Council on Foreign Relations warned that the summit sidelined both Europe and Ukraine, reducing them to spectators in a negotiation about their own continent's fate. From a progressive standpoint, this exposes a deep crisis of representation. While headlines celebrated Trump's charisma and vague rhetoric about historic peace, the ground reality was starkly different. Ukrainian cities continued to suffer under bombardment. The balance of power tilted further toward Moscow, and the global narrative shifted toward abstract peace talks rather than concrete accountability. Then came a brutal reminder of reality. In the immediate aftermath of the Alaska meeting, Russia launched an intense wave of missile strikes across Ukraine, hitting civilian targets, including a U.S. Singapore-owned factory. Mainstream coverage framed this as a setback for peace, as if peace were some independent entity accidentally derailed rather than the direct responsibility of the aggressor. Even The Guardian's front page reminded readers that no diplomatic progress matters unless Ukraine's territorial integrity is restored. At two-thirds of the way through, let's pose another question. Should global diplomacy prioritize symbolic gestures of dialogue, or should it focus relentlessly on concrete justice for victims of aggression? The truth is that this summit was less a bridge to peace and more a theater of optics. Carefully staged photographs, ceremonial displays, and polite speeches masking the harsh reality of ongoing war. The aggressor walked away with greater legitimacy. The mediator basked in the glow of a headline victory. The victim remained voiceless, and the global media largely reinforced a narrative of normalization. In conclusion, the Alaska summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin was not a triumph of diplomacy, but a revealing chapter in the geopolitics of legitimacy and power. Historically, U.S.-Russia summits have often been about balance and deterrence, from Reagan's Geneva talks to Obama's reset, but this one was different. Here the balance tipped. Instead of deterrence, it was deference. Instead of accountability, it was spectacle. The winners are Putin, whose narrative of legitimacy has been reinforced, and Trump, who staged a performance for domestic consumption. The losers are Ukraine, excluded from the table, and the democratic principles undermined by a world willing to shake hands with impunity. Now it's your turn. If you found this analysis revealing, leave us a comment with your opinion on this turning point. Do you think Trump's diplomatic performance was a strategic move or a dangerous concession? Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're tracking the evolution of this story day by day. Tap the bell icon so you don't miss the next update. And if you want to know how the war reached this point, click the video on your screen now. Make sure to subscribe, activate notifications, and don't miss our next report. This is quick news, and this is just the beginning.